Hello, I'm Will Payne, Managing Partner at Newland Partners. Thanks for joining us today on this webinar, Be Better at Feedback, 5 Ideas to Break the Norm and Accelerate Innovation. This is the 4th webinar in our Be Better series, which we've been bringing to you for free during this period of lockdown. We've explored what coronavirus can teach us about leading change, how to excel at customer service in a crisis, and ways to be better at managing performance. If you would like a copy of any of these webinars in the Newland Partners Be Better series, just email us at info@newlandpartners.co.uk. Whether we like it or loathe it, we've all had experience of giving and receiving feedback at work. Today's session is not about defining what feedback is, or even templates to deliver it. In this session, I want to share with you 5 ideas that I hope will stretch your thinking about the value of feedback and how we can make it a more powerful technique in our toolbox of learning, growth, and innovation. The first idea we're going to look at is why feedback is a blunt instrument to stimulate learning. In the second idea, we're going to explore some psychology about how the brain is wired to process feedback. The third idea looks at how we can influence a positive learning state through the language we use. Idea 4 touches on the power of data to affect change. And the final idea focuses on being clear and direct with feedback, which is particularly useful when thinking about some of the difficult conversations we have to have from time to time. I hope you find these ideas thought-provoking and pick up some useful tips to be better in your own practice of giving and receiving feedback. Let's start by thinking about the idea that feedback doesn't work. I want to share with you a video by Marcus Buckingham, researcher, writer, and thought leader on employee engagement and uncovering personal strengths. Marcus Buckingham is perhaps best known for his work with the Gallup organisation into what great managers do differently to win employee engagement and improve performance. His book, First Break All the Rules, is an essential read for the modern day business leader. As you watch and listen to the video, jot down anything that surprises or resonates with you.
Feedback, the belief in the necessity of feedback, is based upon 3 beliefs, all of which are wrong. First belief is that I am the source of truth about you. The second belief is that learning for you is filling up an empty vessel. And then the third belief, our theory of excellence, seems to be that excellence can be defined in advance, in isolation from the person being excellent. Okay, all those 3 are wrong. Starting with the third one. Excellence can't be defined in isolation from the person being excellent. Take funniness. You can't define funniness in isolation from the person being funny. If you look at defining funniness by studying Steve Martin, let's say, you'd come out with, well, no, it's strumming a banjo and waggling your knees and saying, I'm a wild and crazy guy, that's funny. And then you look at Sarah Silverman and you go, oh, no, it's not. It's being slightly caustic and rude in an affectless sort of weird way. And then you look at Chris Rock, it'll be something else. You look at Jerry Seinfeld. What you realize when you look at funny is that you can't extricate the excellence from the person being excellent. Excellence is interwoven with the person being it. Second, learning, we know, is insight. And insight is, as brain scientists say, it's a feeling of knowingness generated from within. And we can see it in the brain. Learning, neuroscientifically, is like building new buds on an existing branch. You grow more synaptic connections in those areas of your brain you have the most pre-existing synaptic connection. So learning for you is actually taking existing patterns within you and helping you find some new little flash of insight, some new bud that helps you add form or structure or focus or a slight refinement of an existing pattern that already lives within you. Therefore, what do you need from me? Well, you don't need to have me tell you where you are failing to match up to some pre-existing measure of excellence. You need my reaction. I'm not a source of truth about who you are. I'm not a source of truth about what you should do. I'm a source of truth for my reaction to you. I'm a very good source of truth about my reaction. I can tell you when I fell asleep in your presentation. And then what your job is to then take my reaction and weave it into some insight that can build upon what you already know. Because particularly what you want isn't just my reaction. It's my reaction to what worked. When you do something, when you perform, you want my reaction to that, do that, that. Did you see what you did there? Not stop that, but that. Did you see that? Because together what we should do is try to uncover what worked. Let's put feedback aside and instead, let's give them what they truly need. Let's give them our instinctive and considered reaction to what works.
I hope that video raised your curiosity. Is the traditional idea that telling someone where they are failing to match up to some pre-existing measure of excellence fundamentally flawed? Two comments by Marcus Buckingham resonate for me. I am not a source of truth about who you are, and you want my reaction to what worked. As human beings, we want to feel connected to something and to be recognized by others. By helping me uncover my strengths, you are building my confidence, self-esteem, and motivation to learn. These are all essential ingredients for me to perform at my best. Our responsibility when we give our reaction or feedback is to leave a positive impression. In the words of Maya Angelou, American poet, singer, and civil rights activist, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So before we give our reaction, we need to stop and check ourselves at the door. We need to consider if what we have to say is going to be valued, and if not, then perhaps it is better to say nothing at all. There are 3 checks we can make to help us decide if our reaction is worth sharing. First, if there is an absence of trust between us, then you are likely to question my motives. Trust takes time to build, but once that foundation is in place, we can be more honest and forthcoming with our reactions, in the knowledge that our relationship is solid. Secondly, we need to be sure that our message is credible. We need to back it up with evidence and be clear when it is our own personal feeling or judgment. And thirdly, we must believe that the information has value to the other person, that they will be better as a result of hearing it. Let's think for a moment about how our brains are wired when it comes to feedback. In a moment, I'm going to put some instructions on the slide. I invite you to read them out aloud and follow them carefully. You may well have come across this exercise before. If you do not have a picture of a pink elephant in your mind right now, then you are probably aware that you're trying to process that image or resist it. Our brains are wired so that trying to suppress unhelpful thoughts is relatively impossible, particularly once the seed of an idea is sown. This is known as the ironic process. Take a look at this picture. In a previous life, I worked as an outdoor educator, and one of the sports I coached was canoeing. When you look at this photo, your eyes may be drawn naturally to the hazards or dangers on the river. If I give an instruction to avoid the rocks and stay away from the trees, I am drawing your attention to the threat of a long and cold swim home. I'm also failing to point out to you what good looks like or illuminating what works. My input is not actually that helpful, and your ability to perform at your best is stifled. However, if I were to tell you to aim the boat directly into the apex of white water that you see in front of you, then I'm focusing your attention on what good looks like. Your brain becomes less active processing unhelpful thoughts, and you are able to show up more powerfully in the situation. Basically, there are two types of feedback. On-track feedback uncovers what works, what success looks like. And off-track helps us to avoid the pitfalls. Think back to the canoe again. It would be irresponsible of me to ignore the rocks altogether, but when I draw your attention to them, it is far more helpful to focus you on what to do rather than telling you to avoid them. By telling you to lean into the rock and to reach and pull with your paddle in the fast-flowing water, I am giving you a strategy to avoid the pitfall. But the key question is how to balance the amount of on-track and off-track feedback we give. Think for a moment about what works for you. Do you respond at your best only to on-track feedback? Or perhaps off-track is what you crave? Maybe a balance of the two. Finding what works best for people is key to stimulating their motivation to learn. We've touched on the theme of growth mindset throughout the Be Better series. There is a direct link between how we think, feel and behave. In her book from 2006 titled Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, Carol Dweck explores the continuum from growth to fixed mindsets. She found that people who believe that success is based on their innate or natural ability are in a fixed mindset, while people who believe success is built on hard work, learning and perseverance have a growth mindset. In reality, of course, we move up and down the continuum depending on the triggers and situations we encounter. So what's the relevance here to giving feedback? Well, clearly, if learning, improvement or innovation is the outcome we're aspiring for, then we and those we give feedback to would benefit from being in growth mindset. It is helpful then to think about how our choice of language, what we say, can influence the mindset of the learner. For example, when we open a feedback conversation, it is better to seek permission. Would you like to hear my thoughts on that? Immediately stimulates a level of curiosity that the learner is unlikely to say no to. Words like feedback, opinion and criticism have a stronger emotive connection and are more likely to trigger defensiveness or resistance. By using more neutral words like observations, thoughts and ideas, we are better able to maintain a state of learning. And also, the decision to act on feedback is in the gift of the learner. If we are directive and tell people what to do, we undermine their ownership and responsibility to develop and grow. Authoritarian behaviour is more likely to trigger fixed mindset, while asking, questioning, coaching will promote growth mindset. In fact, wrapping feedback into a coaching conversation vastly increases the chances that it will land effectively. You've probably come across one of these before. In the last few years, there has been an explosion of your speed signs popping up, particularly near schools, parks and hospitals. They are 14% more effective at getting us to kill our speed than a speed camera. But why? The reason is astonishingly simple. The Your Speed sign triggers a feedback loop, which happens to be the primary way our brains learn, a trial and error process. Albert Bandura, professor at Stanford University, was a leading researcher into the theory of social learning back in the 1970s. He observed that giving individuals a clear goal and a means to evaluate their progress towards it greatly increased the likelihood they would achieve it. But what is particularly effective about the Your Speed sign is that it gives us personal information in real time that we can use to modify our behaviour immediately. In today's workplace, the availability of technology to track and record data has ballooned, and we can use that data in the same way the your speed sign works. Firstly, we need to drill down into what matters most and measure results at the individual level. Then that information has to be shared in real time. There needs to be a connection, a compelling reason why it matters. For example, placing a your speed sign near a school connects us with our moral and emotional obligations to protect children. Next, the information should be linked to a clear goal. This will illuminate the choices we have available to us. Do I slow down, speed up, or continue as I am? And finally, I take action. Traditionally, organisations have seen data as management information to be controlled by managers. KPIs, vehicle trackers, and sensors on production lines have all been capturing valuable data, but it is not so often fed back in real time so that those who are executing the task can respond in the moment. The challenge is a cultural one, to move the information to where it can make a real difference, giving people control and ownership to monitor and moderate their own behaviour rather than taking it away. The final idea I want to share with you will hopefully boost your confidence when it comes to difficult conversations, communicating the tough love messages. Radical candor is a concept founded by Kim Scott, one-time manager at Apple and Google, now an author and coach. Watch this video in which Kim Scott explains what she means by radical candor.
Radical candor is what happens when you show that you care personally and you challenge directly at the same time. Obnoxious aggression is what I call it when you challenge directly, but you fail to show that you care personally. This is when you behave like a jerk. Now, you're not a jerk. Nobody's a jerk all the time, but we all are a jerk some of the time. So that's obnoxious aggression. By far, the most common management mistake happens when somebody does show they care personally, but they fail to challenge directly. They're just trying to be nice, but then they don't help people improve. This I call ruinous empathy. And generally, when you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, so you don't tell them something, and then they keep screwing up, and they don't fix it, you're trying to be nice, but it's not so nice after all, especially if you wind up having to fire them for whatever that mistake is. Now, the worst quadrant of all is manipulative insincerity. This is what I call it when you neither show you care personally nor challenge directly. And manipulative insincerity is when political behavior creeps in, passive-aggressive behavior creeps in, backstabbing behavior creeps in, that sort of thing. The way that you should use this framework is to move every conversation you have towards radical candor. Radical candor is really what you're shooting for. But please don't start writing names in quadrants, or please don't start judging yourself with these terms. We all make all of these mistakes all the time. The goal is just to move your conversations towards radical candor.
Radical candor is a great and simple approach to help us keep those tough love messages on point. Kim Scott's book, Radical Candor: How to Be a Great Boss, is well worth putting on your reading list. 3 valuable lessons she explores in the book is the importance of caring personally and challenging directly, inviting feedback and disagreement from your team and colleagues around you. This important role modelling stimulates a culture of learning and innovation. And thirdly, sometimes we can't sugarcoat the message. The discomfort is unavoidable. Allowing time for the message to soak in and be processed is part of the learning experience. As leaders, we are not there for just one conversation, but to support people on the whole journey. That brings us to the end of this session. I hope you have found it thought-provoking and have a few ideas you can take away and put into action. Today's webinar was the final one in our original plan for the Newland Partners Be Better series. However, it looks like we may be in lockdown for a while yet and have decided to add one more to the series. Lessons from Lockdown will be an interactive session with a panel of leaders talking about the challenges they have faced, what they have learned, and what they will continue to use beyond the current restrictions. We'll confirm the date and time for this session with you by email and post it on our LinkedIn page. We are still open for business and here to help you. Do get in touch if you want to discuss any bespoke online learning for your teams. We are also providing our Insights personality profiling services online and Management Learning Hub with CPD accreditation. If you would like a copy of any of the webinars in the Newland Partners Be Better series, just email us at info@newlandpartners.co.uk. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you again on the next session.